Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgenson.
Welcome out to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio. I'm your host, Tyler Jorgenson, and today we have a absolute legend, a queen of, if you will, someone who has forged a path in the marketing world and created her very own entire industry called Tiny Offers. And you used to hear about lead magnets or tripwires, and they were always said, it was always said that you couldn't make money with those. That's just how you grew leads. But I want to welcome out to the show somebody who has completely changed that perspective. Welcome to the show, Allie Bjerk.
What's up, Tyler? Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah,
thanks for that intro too.
Oh yeah, I just made it up.
Nice.
I'm like, we'll see how this goes. Yeah,
that was impressive. You have to
but it's
follow
all
me
true. Yeah, absolutely. Here's you're in a big space right now where you're on stages and you're very well known. But if we zoom backwards, when was that first moment in your life where you realized you were an entrepreneur?
Probably about 2 months into my first job out of college. Just working for somebody else and having rules on when I needed to come back from lunch break and people watching what I was doing and just not feeling very motivated, knowing. And I worked for an agency. That was my very first job in marketing, and I just remember seeing the discrepancy between what they were charging the client and what they were paying me and being like, wait a minute, this is, it was like $100 difference on what they were keeping and what they were paying me. And that was kind of really early on where it planted that seed of, man, what if I was out on my own or I did this by myself? Could I charge that much money and just keep it? Of course, I didn't really understand business yet and expenses and overhead and all that stuff. But it seemed like a good idea at the time. So pretty early on, right out of college.
Yeah, you just knew you didn't quite fit that show up and do what you're told mold. And so what was your first soiree into business and entrepreneurship?
I started doing some freelancing. I had a background in graphic design, so I started doing some design and social media management. This is back in 2012. So really social media marketing and ads and funnels were kind of all coming onto the scene around that time. And I started with what I knew, which was SEO and social media, and I just kept expanding my skill set. And then I'd learn how to run ads, and then I learned how to build funnels, and then I learned how to be on camera and be visible, because that was really hard for me in the beginning. So I think, at least it's been 12 years now of expanding on skill set after skill set and just, helping me get to this point. So it's been a long journey so far.
Yeah.
Good one. But
along that journey, what was one of the biggest challenges that you had to face and how'd you overcome it?
I think how challenging it would all be without even realizing what running a business really looked like. Having clients to manage. I went from having one boss to having like 15 bosses because I was a freelancer, and all of a sudden I was just working way harder than I thought I was going to be. I thought it'd be easier having my own business, but it was way, way, way harder. So I think it was like a bit of a rude awakening that I had to get used to, and just how much was required of me to know everything about marketing and being visible and sales and managing. And it wasn't just one thing I had to learn. It was all these different hats that I was suddenly wearing. And it was a pretty tough adjustment for a while.
Yeah, big time. Now, I know that you've been in some masterminds and mentorships and things like that, but you've also gone out and forged your own path many times. How do you determine when you're going to listen to the advice of somebody else versus when you're going to just be the pioneer?
That's such a good question. It's such a balance, and I haven't gotten it right every time. I've definitely taken bad advice. I've implemented wrong business models at the advice of consultants and gotten into some tough situations in business just from somebody who didn't have the context of everything. So I think through all that, I realized there's a huge gut instinct in all of it, and a lot of intuition and feeling into things on what feels right or what doesn't feel right. Every time I didn't listen to my gut and I just listened to what the consultant or mastermind runner or whoever expert told me what to do, if there was some element of like, that's not quite the right fit, it always ended up falling apart. Like if I had just listened to my intuition and trusted that voice a little bit deeper, it probably would have worked out better.
That makes sense. So I want you to tell the listeners here, what is a tiny offer? Give us that's a big thing that you push right now. Give us the backstory of how you created it. What is it? And is it for everybody?
Yeah, those are really good questions. So the tiny offer is a strategy. It's a lead generation strategy that's based on being able to run ads to a low ticket front end product that helps you build your email list full of highly qualified people who are already warmed up. They already know who you are. And then you have this amazing email list full of buyers. You know, they say people who pay attention. So there's this list of people who are really paying attention to what you're doing. And then it's so much easier in the coaching space is where I work specifically, like coaching to sell your other coaching programs or your higher ticket masterminds. It's so much easier when people are already warmed up and familiar with you. And they've already gotten a big win from buying your tiny offer and implementing the tiny offer. So that's what evolved into being. Originally, I wasn't ready to launch a high ticket offer, and the tiny offer was like the best thing I could get myself to do. I was used to being behind the scenes of other people's businesses, you know, as a marketer and a creative. And I really wanted a funnel baby of my very own, and I wanted to sell something, but I was really uncomfortable and I didn't like being on camera. I didn't like being in front of people. So I was like, I'm just going to launch this little thing and run ads straight to it. So I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to do anything. Like, I'm just going to sell it on autopilot. And it ended up, that tiny offer ended up, it was a $27 product. It ended up grossing 10K in like my first 2 weeks running it. And that was way more money than I was making as a service provider. I was maxing out at like maybe, you know, $6,000-$7,000 a month at that time. So from there, people were watching this happen, and they watched it go from 10K a month to 90K a month. And I was like mind blown. So I was posting on social media, like, look at what my ad spend's doing. I spent $1 and I made $3, and now I spent $10 and made 30. And it just kept growing until I was making six-figure months from this $27 product. And of course, it's a whole offer suite. So it's got upsells and it had an order bump. So it wasn't just this $27 product. It ended up being about $100 cart value for the whole thing. But people kept asking, they're like, will you teach me this? Like, teach me the ads, teach me how to build this product, teach me the funnel. And I was like, no, dude, I don't want to. I don't want to be in the front, super uncomfortable. And enough people kept asking that I created a course, and I like hid it on the back end of my website. I'm like, if somebody finds this, they can buy it and they can learn the strategy, whatever. Again, I didn't want to be in front of people. And I had a friend who found the course, and he was like, Allie, like, what are you doing? You should teach this as a group coaching program. You need to be really loud about it, make it a whole thing. And I was so resistant. It was so outside my comfort zone. But he told me, he's like, I'll build all the tech. You just show up and you pitch this thing live. Like, I'll tell you what to say. You build the offer. And so we built a $5,000 coaching program. And I think we sold 35 spots the very first time that I pitched it. So the math, cash collected, it was like $130,000. I was like, tiny offers are great. It's really fun to make $27. But group coaching programs were also really fun to sell. So again, it was a lot of growing into that role, just through people requesting it and learning how to be the head of a Zoom room that had 100 people staring at you looking for answers and trying to make sure you answered everyone's questions. And, it was such an exercise of continuing to be so out of your comfort zone, but being up for the challenge anyway. And so the last part of the question that I didn't answer, if it's for everyone, I'm highly biased, but I think everybody needs some sort of liquidation product for ads right now, especially, everything is more expensive with advertising. Getting people to a challenge or getting people to a webinar, show up rates are dismal. Everything seems like it's just not working as well. So if you can have some type of tiny thing that liquidates that ad spend and gets them on your list, it's a much easier way to scale, especially these days. So yeah,
definitely lowers the risk. Yeah, for sure. You've mentioned a couple of times things like needing to overcome the fear or the discomfort of showing up on camera, needing to overcome the fear or discomfort of leading a Zoom room or doing these things, right? So I think every step of our entrepreneurial growth requires a new version of us. But how did you become more comfortable doing these things?
This is born from tiny offers, but one of my favorite views on life is just start tiny. I couldn't even do a Skype interview with if this was Skype. So it's way back, how long I've been doing it. This is pre-Zoom. And when I was in the service-based line of work, people would like say, let's get on Skype. We'll see if it's a good fit for this project. And I would say, sorry, I'm not going to do Skype. you want to hire me, you have to email me. Like that's how I do things. But it was because I was so scared of camera, which is so weird now. But what I ended up doing, I realized that this is a point of resistance or a block that I had, and that it was holding me back. And until I could get over this thing, I wasn't going to go anywhere else. I was just going to stay stuck. So I ended up doing, I think, 30 different coffee chats with people that I'd met in Facebook groups. I just put it out into Facebook groups and I said, hey, I'm an extrovert. I'm an entrepreneur. I work in my basement. If you want to get on a coffee chat on Skype, like let's chat. And I ended up wanting to cancel every call just because I hated Skype so much, but I went through with it. And not only did I build some really good relationships with the people that I had these coffee chats with, but by the 29th or 30th coffee chat, it was not a big deal anymore to be on camera. I was over it. So it was, I think every time I saw a step beyond where I was, and there was some point of resistance of like, I can't do that thing because I'm not able to blank. Whatever the blank was, I always found a way to get myself to do the thing, usually by starting tiny, like the point of least resistance, whatever I could force myself to do, I just would take it head on and try to overcome it.
Yeah, I like that. So it was almost like, a Skype call had such resistance, and it probably was amplified if the call had consequence, right? It was like, okay, if I do a poor job on this call, I'm not going to get the job or whatever it is. But a coffee chat's the same thing, but with less consequence potentially, right? So I love that idea of starting tiny, but you have to eventually just do the things that you are uncomfortable with. What are you working on today? What's going on in the world of Allie Bjerk?
So everything that I am doing today is a tiny offer of some form. I mean, we have now I have a team, and I have my own tiny offers that I'm selling, still running my own ads. I have a group coaching program where I teach tiny offers, and also the done for you side where we're building the entire offer suite for people. So it's kind of funny because people talk about choosing a niche, and usually they talk about, choosing a person that you work with, but I've niched into this tiny offer thing. So now all of my offers involve that in some way, shape, or form. So it's another way to niche is by like funnel type or a specific way to do business.
Yeah, I like that. For a long time, I was a funnel builder in like the ClickFunnels community and all of that. And I've owned a lot of different businesses. So I've done a lot of different things, but it's hard. It was always hard for me to niche down in terms of like what type of business I work with. But I love the idea of these are the types of funnels I do. And I think, or this is the type of offers I help people build. And I think that's really, really cool. Now, you listed a lot of things when I said you're working on now. How big is your team? Like, are you working 1 billion hours a week? How are you balancing things right now?
Yeah, it's still a pretty lean and mighty team. We've got about 5 now between contractors and full-time. I definitely went through some different business models and different stages of growth. I think at my peak, I had a team of, I think it was 15 people. It was like $80,000 a month in payroll, and we're scaling to the moon. This was like February of 2020. We had our biggest month, and then March 2020, we all know what happened, right? And I think just experiencing the stress of managing a huge coaching program and a massive team and running ads and trying to show up when I'm home. I have 3 kids, so homeschooling my 3 kids all of a sudden, it really made me think about what I wanted my business model to look like. So I scaled way back. I almost went back to my service providing roots for a little while. And it was a lot of like belief stuff and probably hitting my upper limit and imposter syndrome and like a bunch of other mindset stuff that, we all experience. So I tested a different business model for a couple of years, more membership based, less focused on group coaching, still running my tiny offers the entire time. So I had, consistent revenue coming in on the, more the digital or passive income side. So I had a little bit of room to decide what I wanted it to look like. But now, probably ever since the beginning of the year, I've gone back into really wanting to scale a team again and get back to where it was pre-COVID. So it took me a little while to get back into it, but testing, working by myself versus working with a team, I way prefer working with a team. Like it's fun to have camaraderie and just, when you're an entrepreneur and you're by yourself all the time anyway, it's nice to have somebody that you can chit chat with on Slack or, bounce ideas off of instead of being the lone decision maker of the company.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what's interesting is there's often the different roles, right? The visionary, the integrator. It sounds like you really wear both hats a lot of times. Like where you build funnels, you do your own ads, you mentioned a couple of times. How do you
Yeah.
manage when to give yourself room, when to give yourself grace, when to let go? How do you just determine when to do that?
That's a really good question. I think when I start realizing I'm avoiding doing things or I'm starting to drop the ball in certain areas, like if I, on the ad side, if I know I haven't updated the creative of the ads for a while and the performance is starting to slip, but I haven't made the time to prioritize getting in there, then I can tell it's time to, at least in some capacity, bring a team member in to either design different creative or even just have me be on the strategy side, almost the creative director, and they go in and actually manage the ads or build the ads out. I think I've when I was scaling really hard back in 2020, all of the advice, again, consultant advice that I was getting is remove yourself as much as possible. Like, don't let people talk to you, put the velvet rope around your time, and the team can just handle all of it. But because I like people, I like being involved and hearing what their experience is like in the program, I started getting really apathetic about just what I was building because I was too far removed from it. Like the team was hesitating to involve me in decisions because that was the advice the consultant had given me, like just teach them how to make their own choices and just let it run. But then I was like sitting here like, I wonder what everybody's doing today. Like, what are they building? How are the clients doing? You know, it was like I had sequestered myself too much. So again, that's also that gut instinct of what do you want to do? What's right for your personality, for how you want to build a business. But I think as visionaries, we can also have, do you know Les McKeown? He wrote this book, Predictable Success. He talks about visionaries as arsonists. And like, I think I can definitely waver on the arsonist side of visionary if I'm left alone to just my ideas too many times. You know, it's like, ooh, I could build that funnel or that shiny object. It's like black belt syndrome when you know all the things and then you want to do too many things. So I think having a team also pulls me back from too much spaghetti throwing and keeps my funnel blinders on a little bit more too.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing because you want to chase all of these fun ideas. You want to like see how things work. A lot of the joy of being a visionary is the idea that you just can create. But the reality is we can't create everything, right? We have finite time and energy.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. What is something that you really got excited about building that just maybe you spent a ton of time on it and it didn't work out?
There have been lots of tiny offers that I've launched that didn't do as well as I wanted, or even ones that I was really excited about and maybe didn't attract the right back end attention. So that it looked like they were working on the front, but I always want to make sure we're building the right like psychographics where it's a person who will join a group coaching program. And so I built and scaled one tiny offer and we were talking to all of the buyers and they were all wanting to start a business, not actually business owners, right? So then of my higher ticket stuff is never going to make sense for them because they're still trying to make their first dollar. So I think some of my biggest failures, and I think Russell Brunson says like even he, like 1 out of 10 funnels he launches works the way he wants it to, for maybe it was 3 out of 10. I don't remember. One of them, they don't all work right away. So I think the thing that I've been most excited about lately too is I've been doing way more testing and way more split tests, different ads to different versions of the page with slightly different messaging than the other page has. And just having I think probably the experience and the bandwidth at this point to think about it like that instead of my first one was like, oh my gosh, I hope this works. Like this is my one shot. This is all I got.
Yeah.
I hope it's successful. Where now I know I can launch a lot of different versions at the same time and then cherry pick like, okay, this one worked because this was the headline. This worked because this button color or whatever. So that's been really fun.
It's incredibly important for people to hear what you just said, that lots of times, even the queen of tiny offers, the tiny offer doesn't work the way you want, right? And that's good. It's okay. It's part of the process. I think what's so frustrating is when we get in this mindset of thinking that success means failure never exists, right? Where I think it's just becoming comfortable with failure and continuing to move through it. And that's really what marketing is. Marketing is about uncovering failures rapidly, right? What
Mm-hmm.
isn't working, what creatives aren't working. I mean, we can look at it on the opposite side, that what creatives worked the best, but really what that's telling us is which ones didn't perform, which audiences didn't work, which is failure. And that's okay. I think that's, I hope that people hear that and hear that you just have to have the energy and the mindset that there's going to be iterations, there's going to be testing. What is something
not
that
take it
worked? Yeah,
personally
go ahead.
either. Oh, sorry. Not taking it
No, I want
personally
to
if
hear.
if it's not successful the first time. A lot of people that I've worked with through different capacities are like, I'm bad at marketing. My audience doesn't like me. I'm not good enough at this. They make it about them, and it's a numbers game. It was slightly, the wrong word. It wasn't you. So I think if people can move from failure to failure faster, that helps a lot too. I know I used to take like months in between failures to try to relaunch, and I wish I had moved a lot faster through that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's easy to look backwards and say, oh man, I wish I would have. But you mentioned something earlier and I want to bring it back up. And you mentioned imposter syndrome. Now I happened to see a post of yours recently addressing somebody's opinion on imposter syndrome. Honestly, imposter syndrome is something I've never really understood, just because I feel like it's not really well defined. Not that it's not like I don't think that people struggle with it, but talk to me about what is imposter syndrome and what's your take on it.
Oh, well, now I have to define it. I don't know if it's clearly defined or not. I guess my interpretation.
So what does it mean to you when someone says it's not imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
Like you clearly got to, you clearly had energy. I
was triggered. This is true.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. So the post was like, you don't have imposter syndrome. You're not good enough yet, or you're just not good enough yet was, what was said.
Yeah.
And I was triggered probably from a more feminine perspective, or I know women, they've done a lot of studies about women and imposter syndrome, and data says that we experience imposter syndrome at higher rates. So whatever imposter syndrome means, I think my definition would probably be not feeling like you're capable of doing something, or you're not worthy of doing the thing. You're not ready for it because you don't have the experience or whatever excuses people have. Like you don't have the testimonials yet, or the proof. Or some people do have testimonials and proof and they still feel this imposter syndrome. Like they're not worthy of being in the situation that they're in. So my opinion was that if you're telling people that they're not good enough yet, for the people who are experiencing imposter syndrome, that's just going to compound on what they're already feeling. So if the goal is to just empower people to go do the thing and start tiny, even if they don't feel like they're ready yet, it was like the opposite of my entire messaging as a brand. Yeah. And, it's like, I'd rather encourage people to just go do the thing and maybe pretend that they don't have imposter syndrome, like act as if they already are the person they want to be, versus like, I'm not good enough yet. So that's why I was a little triggered in the story.
And that's okay.
Which I admit.
I'm not challenging that at all. I think it's okay to have different perspectives on things like that. And it's also really tough to try to extrapolate an entire thought from a one sentence, social media post. That is difficult.
Yeah. And some people might find that super motivating too. Some people might read that.
The irony is I actually did, because I'm like, sometimes we tend to we overanalyze. Sometimes we tend to think, oh, maybe I'm struggling because, and instead of just taking the tiny step, we try to overanalyze why we haven't taken the step yet. And I'm like, just take the step. Yeah. Just get the reps in, get the experience, right? Fail faster, right? Stop spending so much time trying, like there's a time to understand and there's a time to act. And I think that's how I took it, but that's just because that's the lens I was seeing it from at the time. But I'm also learning to warmly embrace multiple perspectives of the same thing.
And isn't it funny how much we project our own stuff? Like my whole story was about imposter syndrome and overcoming imposter syndrome through tiny steps. So then I see something like that, and that's the lens that I interpret it through, not like, okay, you suck, go work harder. Not that that's what you were thinking, but that mentality of just run, like keep going until you don't have it, as a motivational quote. And plus it was great engagement too. Like there were tons of comments on there, and and that, may have been the point.
I struggle with that. I struggle with the polarizing us versus them, throw stones. I've never been good at that. I always like when Russell talks about the reluctant hero, which I feel like that seems to be a little bit of kind of your personality and characteristics. I always joke I'm the reluctant reporter. Like like I don't want to be the hero. I don't even I love sharing other people's stories. I just want to do that. But even then, you know, after 14 years, sometimes it still takes energy and it seems tough. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
but I think that's a really fascinating take on, and I like your message. I love the idea of taking these tiny steps, because no one feels that a tiny step is overwhelmed, right? If we say
Yeah.
tomorrow I want you to launch a self-liquidating offer that goes to a high-ticket coaching program, and I want you to be able to scale all of your ads, have all your creative done, do everything, and I want it done, like that's going to massively terrorize like most people.
Yeah. Yep.
But like, hey, what's the small step you can take, right? What can you do? What's the next best thing?
Yeah.
So, Allie, what's your next best thing? What's the thing you're going to do next?
Well, for me, I have a book coming out in the near future. I don't have an exact date yet, but it's about starting tiny and you know, building, just taking those steps. And it talks about tiny offer funnels specifically, but it kind of ties in my story and how I figured out this strategy and why this strategy worked for me. So that's the tiny step I'm trying to take, is like get this book out into the world. But I think just continuing to manage a team and grow a team and stay, you know, even if I hit my upper limit again, like keep growing with it instead of burning it down is going to be my next tiny step, is just continue growing.
And I know that it's really important to you that running these businesses, doing all these things, doesn't pull you completely away from family and your personal goals. So what's one item on your personal bucket list you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
My big goal for my personal list is to continue buying real estate, just to have, I mean, to make work optional at some point. We've got 6 properties right now, and my goal is 15. So I've got some work to do to fill in the gap between 6 to 15 properties. But I love the idea. Like, I love what I do, and I don't think I'll ever quit. I'll never retire. But just having that option and having the, you know, that other stream of passive income coming in, it is a huge value of mine too.
Yeah. So I love that. Not, I want to go on a trip, I want to do this. It was, I just want to keep
That
buying real estate.
Yeah.
Where's your
Real
dream
estate,
location?
investing.
Yeah. If you could wake up tomorrow anywhere in the world on a vacation, where would it be?
I really want to go to Norway right now. My husband's family just traced their lineage and found out that we are somehow related to a king of Norway from like 800 years ago. So now my daughters are calling themselves Norwegian princesses, and they're like dressing up and running around the house.
Absolutely.
And I mean, why not go to the homeland? I think that would be really
No,
fun.
you've got to. Yeah. Storm the castle.
Yes. Yeah. Take it back.
Take it back.
Somewhere.
There's your next property.
Yeah. Perfect.
I love that. I really appreciate you coming out on the show. This has been a ton of fun chatting with you. If people want to learn more about you, they can go to alliebjerk.com and also check out tinyoffer.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Tyler.